The NBA we all know for tunnel fits and the flyest athletes in the world didn't accept culture at first. It fought it. It became the first league in the world where what you wore said as much about you as how you played. But most people don't talk about how it actually happened. Because there was a time where players like Allen Iverson weren't celebrated for their style. They were criticised for it. And that tension, well, that's where everything started. So let's get into it. And I think once you understand this story, you won't really look at athlete style the same again. Because the NBA didn't start off stylish. It became that because players pushed against what was acceptable. Now, there's absolutely no denying that NBA has always had style, from coaches to players. However, it's always been quite controllable and had lacked individuality. And after the saga that happened in 2004 that we all know about called Malice at Palace, if you don't already know about this, there is an amazing documentary on Netflix that you should check out that kind of explains what happened and how it all went down. But after this, the NBA was surrounded by a lot of bad press. They would refer to players as gangsters, as thugs, and then they would correlate this back to hip-hop. And so every player that wore slightly baggy, oversized clothes, looked like they just stepped out of a rap video, would get criticised for it. And because of this, in 2005, previous NBA Commissioner David Stern had actually implemented a business casual attire rule, which basically meant whether you're sitting courtside, whether you're arriving to games, whether you're travelling, you have to be dressed in business casual attire. A lot of players felt as if they had to alter their authentic selves. This also showed that the NBA claimed to be all about diversity and culture. However, when it became too real, they tried to purify it by adding these rules. And there's so many players we have to thank from that era that were vocal about it, that showed resistance, that still put up wearing what they wanted to wear. Because what the NBA suppressed actually ended up becoming one of their biggest assets in this game today. And let's not be silly, of course we know Adam Silver is also aware of this. 2014, current NBA Commissioner Adam Silver adopted a less rigid approach to this business casual attire rule because he wanted players to have a more expressive approach. And I think Adam Silver is great in that sense because he understands the need for personal branding. Now, I wouldn't say David Stern didn't, because in his day and age it was different. But nowadays, players don't just build a personal brand and relations through how they play on the court, and they do that through social media. That's why a lot of the players in this day and age, you'll see them on YouTube, you'll see them on Instagram, you'll see them naturally and organically connecting with brands they actually love and having the endorsements come out through that, because endorsements aren't just limited to a shoe or to a sports drink. Now they can work with any brand they want. And I know the NBA is smart and they understand how much of a huge market the fashion landscape is for them. And this can be seen through their collaboration with Louis Vuitton. It was a 3-year-long collaboration, and during those 3 years, they didn't just produce clothing, garments and luggage, but they crafted the case for the Larry O'Brien Championship Trophy. And while on the topic of Louis Vuitton, it's not difficult to talk about how these luxury powerhouse brands also understand the influence of these athletes, especially the one-of-ones. Now, Wemby is currently a Louis Vuitton house ambassador, and previously LeBron James as well. And players like Dwayne Wade with their collaborations and ambassador roles with Versace. Now, football is a completely different entity, and it never had its Iverson moment within sports. Football has always been a club and football identity first sort of sport. The players are very much media trained and they're not as expressive as NBA players. You can watch an NBA player's press conference and then go watch a football player's and you'll see the vast difference immediately. But obviously footballers aren't to blame for that. The media plays a huge part in that, which we will get into. But I just want to talk about some of the pioneers of football and the fashion landscape. And one of them is David Beckham. Now, if you guys haven't already, I know I'm recommending loads of documentaries to go watch, but go watch the David Beckham docuseries on Netflix. There is stints where he talks about his sports and fashion lifestyle in there and how much he was judged for even stepping into the modelling and fashion world. Despite him at that time being one of the best players in the world, they didn't care about what he was producing on the pitch because he was shooting with Calvin Klein after, and they hated it, which is insane because the media does play a huge part in how players show up outside of the pitch. I have mentioned previously how I'm an Arsenal fan, and as an Arsenal fan, I've seen a lot of my players crucified for how they dress, and that includes the likes of Hector Bellerin, Joe Willett, Reece Nelson, and this wasn't even too long ago. I do want to give an honourable mention to Balotelli while I'm just talking about this, and Paul Pogba actually, because these are also two players who were extremely expressive and always crucified by the media for doing so. And these weren't terrible players. It was just, you can't have an okay performance and then go walk around with the LV bag around your arm, because that's a terrible thing to do. It was very, very, very silly, but that's just how the media was. Now, whether the media being so harsh plays a part in it, it doesn't matter as much now, because not only are players well and truly embracing this lifestyle, but you have clubs themselves joining in too. We have some of the biggest clubs in the world collaborating with the biggest names in fashion. We've got Louis Vuitton and Real Madrid, we've got Off-White and AC Milan. Not only are clubs taking part, but players understand, like I mentioned previously, that brand endorsements are a lot bigger than what's based on the pitch. Yeah, you're not just going to get a collab with Adidas or Nike, but the world is your oyster. This is why we now see players always linked to fashion brands. This is why we now see players front row at some of the most exclusive fashion weeks in the world. And while we're on the topic of players and fashion, we have to mention Liverpool's current striker, Hugo Ekitike, because more recently he has been the face of Harrods Men, Little Club with Trapard, and on top of that, a brand ambassador for Balenciaga. Now, this has all organically come through him well and truly just expressing himself. Now, this would have never been the case 10, 20 years ago. So to see the shift and how quickly it has changed has been incredible. And I do think, once again, I mentioned it previously, we do have to thank pages and communities like Footballer Fits, like League Fits, that not just show these players doing what they love, but well and truly putting them on an amazing pedestal to do so, showing them love and showing them sport, because it hasn't always been like that. So for there to be places where they're championed for expressing themselves is always great to see. A footballer may have actually been slower to adapt to this sort of lifestyle. However, there's no denying that it is going to be the sport to change it all. And this is purely because, let's be honest, it is a more global sport and it does have a lot more global and cultural influence. Now, would I say football is going to surpass NBA in cultural influence is something I don't think I can see myself saying right now, purely because I'll always go back to the pioneers when it comes to things like this. If those players didn't resist 20, 30, 40 years ago, we would not be in the position we are today. So unless something absolutely insane happens, I highly doubt I'll say that they're going to surpass the NBA in cultural influence. However, in terms of global influence, 110% yes. There's no denying that basketball built the blueprint, but football will take it worldwide and change the game entirely. Now, even with the World Cup this summer happening in America, I'm actually intrigued to see if it changes anything. So let me know what you guys think. Like, do you think they're going to implement tunnel fits? Do you think it will change anything at all? Because I know there has been a growing influence for football and the MLS within America, so I want to see, and I'm very excited to see if any changes happen, or anything that happens in the World Cup will be implemented into actual European football the following season. So I'm very intrigued to see that. I do think the media will continue to judge. There's absolutely nothing we can do about that, but we can take inspiration from legends from the past and resist. Like, these players can resist, they can still authentically be themselves, and who knows, in 10, 20 years future players might be the ones to benefit from all the resisting that players from our day and age did. Because at the end of the day, like I said, these players aren't robots and they have the right to express however they feel, however they want to dress, and we should be supportive, even if it's not our style, of course. And last but not least, if I could change one thing, it would obviously, I want the media to stop crucifying players, but a more realistic option would be, I want coaches to start putting that shit on me, guys. Like, I'm sick of seeing them sitting courtside, on the sideline, in their quarter zips. It's the playoffs, it's the NBA playoffs, especially for the playoffs. I want them in their suits. You don't have to wear a three-piece. Just do a little two-piece and a tie. Just look sharp on the sidelines. If I could change one thing, it would most definitely be that. Regular season, I understand there's a lot of games, but at least for the playoffs, guys. I know some football coaches do dress well on the sidelines, so I'm going to stay off their backs. But yeah, for the NBA coaches, we need that back. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, a bit different, but I very much enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is going to be running the world in terms of sports and fashion in a few years? Do you think football is going to be on top, or do you think the basketball players are going to continue to maintain their crown? Because right now, I think even if you ask footballers, they say basketballers are on top. So yeah, do you think that's going to change? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.